The automayor was Chris as Jonathan Knight, the billionaire tech mogul, stood in front of his son's grave. He had visited the spot nearly every day since his son, Daniel, had tragically passed away 3 years ago. The pain was still raw, cutting through his chest with every breath, as if the wound had never fully healed. It was a Saturday, just past dawn, the fog lingering in the low valleys of the cemetery like an unspoken ghost. The sky was painted in shades of deep gray, and the world felt eerily silent. Jonathan reached down and carefully adjusted a bouquet of white lilies resting against the tombstone. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, now carried a constant weariness that even his wealth couldn't ease. He thought of Daniel every waking moment. A son with endless potential, a young man who could have been anything he wanted. But all that was taken in a moment, in a car accident that had shattered Jonathan's life. As he stood there in the cold, something felt different today. There was an odd stillness in the air, like the world itself was holding its breath. Jonathan turned, his gaze sweeping over the rows of gravestones, half expecting to find some sign of a family or caretaker walking among the plots. But there was only emptiness. That's when he saw her, a figure, standing by the old oak tree near the far corner of the cemetery. She appeared out of place, as if she didn't belong. Her ragged clothes, worn and torn from years of hardship, fluttered in the wind. Her hair was a tangled mess, long and unkempt, obscuring part of her face. But it wasn't her disheveled appearance that caught Jonathan's attention. It was a look in her eyes. They were wide, haunted eyes, filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. Guilt, fear, maybe even sorrow. As she stood there, almost motionless, her gaze met his. Jonathan's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a strange pull, as if something invisible tethered him to her. He wasn't one for confrontations, especially not here, in the place that held his most cherished memories of Daniel. Yet, something compelled him to approach. With slow, measured steps, he walked across the graveyard, the gravel crunching beneath his polished shoes. As he drew closer, the woman's expression shifted, just slightly. It was almost imperceptible, but Jonathan noticed it. Her eyes flickered, like she was unsure of what to do. "Are you lost?" Jonathan asked, his voice softer than usual. It wasn't a question he often asked, especially not of someone who clearly didn't belong in a place like this. The woman didn't respond at first, her gaze flickering nervously between him and the gravestones. But after a moment, she nodded slightly, her voice barely a whisper. I'm not lost," she said, her words strained as if they carried a weight she could hardly bear. "I've come for him." Jonathan's brow furrowed in confusion. "Come for who?" Her eyes met his again, and this time, Jonathan noticed something new in them, a spark of recognition. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "I've come for Daniel." Jonathan's stomach dropped. There was a sickening feeling in his chest, a coldness that spread through his limbs. This woman, this ragged, homeless stranger, knew his son's name. He hadn't even spoken it aloud. She couldn't possibly know about Daniel. She couldn't. "How do you know my son's name?" Jonathan demanded, his tone sharp, his heart racing. The woman swallowed hard, her fingers curling into fists. "I don't know how to explain it," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But Daniel he was there for me. He saved me." Jonathan's mind spun. His son saved someone? Daniel had been kind, yes, but his life had been cut short before he could ever truly make a difference, before he could leave a mark on the world. Was this woman just another stranger caught up in a tragic delusion? Before he could speak, she stepped forward, her feet moving slowly, hesitantly, as if afraid he might push her away. "I don't expect you to believe me," she continued, "but I owe him everything. Without Daniel, Her voice trailed off, and her eyes grew distant, as if she was reliving something painful. "I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be alive." Jonathan stared at her, the words sinking in. He opened his mouth, ready to ask 100 questions, but before he could, the woman took another step toward him, this time with more certainty. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "You're Daniel's father, aren't you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Jonathan replied, his voice catching. He felt a knot in his stomach, his mind a whirlpool of confusion and disbelief. What was this woman talking about? What did she mean? I know you're angry, she said softly, her voice gentle. And you have every right to be. But please, let me explain. I'm not here to cause trouble. I need to show you something. Something that might help you understand. Jonathan took a deep breath, his pulse quickening. He didn't trust her, not one bit. But the look in her eyes, desperation mixed with something deeper, made him hesitate. He had to know. All right, he said, his voice firm. Show me. The woman nodded, as if she had been waiting for him to say those very words. She turned toward the old oak tree, her movement slow and deliberate, and then she disappeared behind it. Jonathan followed her, his thoughts racing, his heart hammering in his chest. What could she possibly want to show him? And why now? Why after all this time? She reappeared moments later, her face pale, her hands trembling as she held something in them, a small, weathered leather journal. I found this, she said, handing it to Jonathan. It's Daniel's. Jonathan's hand shook as he reached out, the weight of the journal heavy in his grip. He stared at it, unsure of what to expect. The journal was old, worn down by time and weather, but it looked familiar. It looked like something Daniel might have carried. For a moment, Jonathan stood frozen, his mind racing. Could this really be his son's? What could it possibly contain that was worth hiding away? I didn't know where else to go, the woman said, her voice breaking. I found it after the accident. He told me to hold on to it, that it might make sense one day. Jonathan opened the journal slowly, his fingers trembling as he flipped through the first few pages. There was Daniel's handwriting, neat but hurried, like he was trying to get something down before time ran out. Read it, she urged softly. Please. It's all there. Everything you need to know. Jonathan glanced at her, uncertainty clouding his mind. But then, with a deep breath, he began reading. Jonathan's fingers trembled as he turned the brittle pages of the weathered journal. The smell of aged paper filled the air, mingling with a damp, earthy scent of the cemetery. His eyes scanned the first few pages, each one filled with notes, sketches, and phrases that seemed disconnected, as if Daniel had been struggling to put his thoughts in order. The first entry was dated only a few weeks before his death. I don't know what's happening. I keep seeing her everywhere. I can't explain it. She's just there, in my dreams, in my thoughts. I don't even know her name, but she feels so familiar. I have to find out who she is. I have to know why she's haunting me. Jonathan's chest tightened as he read those words. He couldn't make sense of them. His son had never mentioned a woman, especially not in such a confused, desperate way. The words were raw, unrefined, like Daniel had been writing in a panic. Who is she? Jonathan muttered aloud, though the question was directed more toward himself and the woman standing beside him. The homeless woman, whose name he still hadn't learned, remained silent, watching him closely. Her gaze seemed to burn with an intensity that made Jonathan uncomfortable. He turned the page, pushing aside the unease creeping up his spine. The next entry was even more troubling. I found her today, the woman from my dreams. She's real. She's not just a figment of my imagination. I was walking home, lost in thought, when I saw her standing at the corner of Franklin and 7th, her face hidden beneath the hood of a tattered coat. She was looking right at me, just standing there. I felt like she was waiting for me, like she knew I'd be there. I followed her. Jonathan's pulse quickened. Daniel had followed her? Why? Who was she? He turned the page again, his mind racing. The words became more urgent. She led me down an alley behind an old building. I thought I was going to die. I'm not exaggerating. The fear I felt in that moment was real. But she didn't harm me. Instead, she told me something that shook me to my core. She said she'd been waiting for me, that I had a purpose in her life, that she knew me, but I don't remember her. Why doesn't she just tell me who she is? Jonathan felt a chill spread through him as the entries grew darker. His fingers flew over the pages, reading faster now, desperate for answers. The next entry was brief but loaded with tension. I don't know how to explain this. She said she's been looking for me for years, that we were meant to meet, and that she's been following me ever since the accident. She said the accident wasn't an accident, that it was a warning. Jonathan stopped reading. His breath caught in his throat. The journal fell slightly from his grasp, and he forced himself to take a steadying breath. The woman, this mysterious stranger, had claimed that his son's death wasn't an accident. He had to keep reading. There had to be more. Do you understand any of this? Jonathan finally asked, his voice hoarse, his gaze locked onto the woman. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her eyes flickered to the journal, a fleeting moment of regret passing over her face. "I know it's hard to believe," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's all true. Everything he wrote. Daniel was special. He didn't know it yet, but he was." Jonathan was about to ask her what she meant when he found the next entry. It was the longest yet. I couldn't take it anymore. The dreams, the constant feeling that something was wrong. I had to confront her. So, I did. I went to the alley again, hoping to find some answers. And there she was, standing under the dim streetlight, just like before. She was different this time, though. There was something new in her eyes, something urgent, something desperate. She told me that my life wasn't mine to control, that my death wasn't my own, that I had been chosen, but not for what I thought. She said I'd be part of something bigger, something that would change the world. But in exchange, I had to give something up. I asked her what it was. She wouldn't say. But then she gave me a choice. I could walk away, forget everything, and live my life. Or I could join her and help fulfill the mission. I didn't understand what that meant, but I felt the weight of her words. Something about them. They didn't sit right with me, and I'm not sure why, but I said yes. I agreed. Jonathan's stomach twisted. His heart raced. What was Daniel involved in? And why hadn't he told Jonathan any of this? Why had he kept these secrets hidden away in a journal? As he read on, the journal's tone became more fragmented, like Daniel had started to lose grip on his own reality. The final entries were nothing but brief sentences, disjointed thoughts. I see her again. She's watching me. She says they're coming for me. I'm scared. Jonathan's hands clenched around the journal as he processed the final words. His son had been terrified. Daniel hadn't been just a victim of a random accident. He had been part of something much darker, something far beyond anything Jonathan had ever imagined. The woman beside him spoke again, her voice filled with an unsettling calm. You're reading his truth. Daniel was involved in something big, and now that he's gone, they'll be coming for you next. Jonathan's head spun. What do you mean they? Who are you talking about? She sighed, a sound of deep sorrow escaping her lips. The ones who made him part of their plan. The ones who chose him before he even knew what was happening. I was trying to protect him. I should have done more, but I couldn't. She turned her eyes to the ground, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her jacket. And now it's your turn. Jonathan stepped back, his mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, but nothing made sense. I don't understand, he whispered. What plan? What did he get involved in? And why would they come after me? The woman met his gaze, her eyes filled with a haunting sympathy. Because they know you're his father, and they know you'll be looking for the answers. They'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't uncover the truth. Jonathan swallowed hard. His hands were clammy as he stared at the journal in his grip. The world, as he knew it, was unraveling before him. What had Daniel gotten himself involved in? And how had this woman become part of the story? I'm sorry, the woman whispered, but this is just the beginning. Jonathan stood frozen, staring at the journal in his hands, trying to process the chaos of the last few minutes. His mind struggled to piece together the fragmented, disturbing narrative that Daniel had left behind. The woman's cryptic words only added to the whirlwind of confusion, pulling Jonathan further into a world he didn't recognize. Who are they? Jonathan asked, his voice sharp with urgency. His hands gripped the journal tightly, but the weight of the words felt too much to bear. The woman was still standing nearby, watching him with a look of quiet desperation in her eyes, as though she had been waiting for this moment to arrive for years. They are part of something larger, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the tension thick in the air. An organization, a group, whatever you want to call it. They are everywhere, Jonathan. They are hidden in plain sight. And Daniel, he became part of their plan. Jonathan could feel the knot in his stomach tighten. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled with unease. This wasn't just some random conspiracy. This was something far more dangerous. He could sense it in the woman's words, in the fear etched into her face. She knew more than she was letting on, but Jonathan could tell she was hesitant, as if revealing everything would cost her something she wasn't ready to lose. But why didn't he tell me any of this? Jonathan demanded. Why didn't Daniel warn me? Why did he keep it all hidden? The woman sighed heavily, looking down at the ground, her eyes haunted with regret. Daniel wasn't meant to be a part of it, not at first. He was just a kid, trying to find his place in the world. But they found him, Jonathan. They saw something in him, a spark, something unique that they could use. And once they had him, there was no turning back. Jonathan's grip on the journal tightened. His heart pounded in his chest. But what is it? What did they want with him? What did they promise him? The woman swallowed hard, her lips trembling as if the truth was too painful to say. They offered him power, knowledge, a chance to be part of something bigger, something important. They told him he could change the world. But all they really wanted was his mind, his abilities. They were using him, Jonathan, using him like a pawn in a game that's much bigger than any of us. Jonathan's world seemed to tilt. The idea of his son, of Daniel, being manipulated, used as a tool, it made his blood run cold. The boy he had raised, the young man he had loved and watched grow up, had been part of something so sinister. I thought he was just a normal kid, Jonathan murmured, his voice cracking with emotion. He had so much potential. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I notice something was wrong? The woman took a step closer to him, her voice softening, as if trying to comfort him. It wasn't your fault, Jonathan. They are very good at what they do. They make sure people like you don't notice. They have ways of controlling everything, everyone. Jonathan clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. But why come to me now? Why show up in the cemetery and bring this to me? The woman looked away, her face shadowed with guilt. Because they are coming for you, too. You're his father. They won't stop until they know you can't get in their way. And the truth? The truth is the most dangerous thing of all. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, sleek black device the size of a smartphone. This is what they left behind, she said, holding it up in front of Jonathan. The sleek black object seemed ordinary at first glance, but Jonathan could feel the weight of its significance. Daniel had one just like it. It's a key to everything. And now, they'll come looking for it, looking for you. Jonathan's pulse quickened as he took the device from her. It felt cold in his hand, and the screen blinked to life the moment his fingers touched it. He could see a series of encrypted files, random strings of code flashing across the screen too fast for him to make sense of. The words were a jumbled mess. Nothing was clear. This is what? Jonathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's expression grew more serious. Her eyes locked onto the device as if it was some kind of ticking time bomb. This is their network. The files, the data, everything they've been working on for years. They've been collecting people like Daniel, people with potential, and using them to build something far beyond anything you can imagine. And now that you have this, they'll stop at nothing to take it back. Jonathan stared at the device, his heart racing. What do I do with it? How do I protect myself? How do I protect Daniel's legacy? The questions tumbled out of him, his mind reeling with the implications of everything he had learned in the last few hours. You can't protect yourself, Jonathan. Not for long. The woman's voice was grave. The only way to stop them is to uncover their plan. You need to find out what they were after, what Daniel was meant to help them with. And you need to do it before they find you. A chill ran down Jonathan's spine. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. This was bigger than anything he had ever faced, and the fact that his own son had been caught in the web made it all the more personal. But how? Jonathan asked, his voice faltering. How do I uncover it? How do I stop them? The woman shook her head slowly. I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing for sure. The key to everything is right here. She pointed at the device in his hand. And you can't do this alone. You need to find someone who can help you decode it. Someone who knows what they are dealing with. Someone who isn't afraid to go after the truth. Jonathan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The weight of the situation pressed down on him like a heavy stone, but there was no turning back now. He couldn't ignore what was at stake. His son's death, the mystery surrounding it, the dangerous group that was still out there hunting for him. "I don't know who to trust," Jonathan admitted, his voice low. "How can I be sure that you're not part of this? Too, that you're not working for them?" The woman's eyes softened, and she took a cautious step back. "I wish I could give you more answers, but all I can tell you is that I'm not your enemy. I never wanted this. I wanted to protect Daniel, but I failed. I thought if I could just keep him safe, but I didn't. And now, I'm trying to help you, before it's too late." Jonathan stared at her, trying to read her face, but it was too difficult to tell whether she was sincere or whether she was simply another pawn in this twisted game. Yet, something in her eyes, the vulnerability, the raw emotion, made him believe her. He had no choice but to trust her, at least for now. "I'll help you," Jonathan said finally, his voice hardening with resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes to uncover the truth. But I need to know everything. I need to know what you're not telling me." The woman nodded, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. "I'll tell you everything, Jonathan. I'll help you find the answers. But you have to promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Promise me you won't stop until you know the truth. No matter how dark it gets, no matter what you uncover. Promise me you won't stop." Jonathan paused, the gravity of her words sinking in. He didn't know what lay ahead, or how deep this rabbit hole went. But he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. Not after everything he had. "I promise," Jonathan said, his voice resolute. And with that, their journey into the heart of the conspiracy had truly begun. The days after Jonathan made the promise to uncover the truth were a blur. He had no time to mourn, no space to process the grief of losing his son. The weight of the journal, the cryptic words, and the woman's warnings hovered over him like a suffocating cloud, making every breath feel heavier. His life, once neatly compartmentalized into billion-dollar deals and technological innovations, had been shattered. The world he knew was no longer black and white. Everything had been tainted by the darkness that surrounded Daniel's death, and now he was being dragged into a world of shadows, one that threatened to consume him completely. The homeless woman, whose name he still didn't know, kept her distance after the cemetery meeting. She had given him a way forward, but she remained elusive, disappearing into the night whenever he tried to reach out. Still, Jonathan felt the pull, the sense that she knew more than she had let on, that she had information that could unravel the truth. Jonathan didn't waste time. The device she had given him, the small, sleek black object, remained in his pocket for days. It had become his constant companion. He hadn't dared touch it since that fateful day in the cemetery. The encrypted files had been locked tight, and he didn't have the knowledge or resources to break through them. He had tried a few times on his own, but the security measures on the device were far beyond his skill. It became clear he needed help. He reached out to someone he could trust, his old friend and former colleague, Malcolm Harding. Malcolm had been with Jonathan in the early days of his career, back when they were both trying to change the tech industry. Malcolm was a hacker, brilliant, eccentric, and often unpredictable. But he was the kind of person who could break into systems, decode security protocols, and retrieve hidden files. He was also the kind of person who could keep a secret, no matter how dangerous. Jonathan met Malcolm in a small, dimly lit cafe on the edge of the city, away from prying eyes. The cafe smelled of strong coffee and old books, the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. Malcolm was already there, seated in a corner booth, his laptop open in front of him. His disheveled appearance, scruffy beard, untidy hair, and faded hoodie was a stark contrast to Jonathan's polished suit, but they had always shared a bond that transcended appearances. "Jonathan." Malcolm greeted him with a slight nod as he slid into the booth opposite his friend. "You've got that look in your eyes. Something's not right." Jonathan didn't waste time with pleasantries. He slid the small device across the table, his eyes fixed on Malcolm. "I need your help. There's something on here that I can't decode. Something that's important. I need to know what it is." Malcolm's eyes flicked to the device and then back to Jonathan. He raised an eyebrow. "You've gotten yourself in deep this time, haven't you?" His tone was playful, but Jonathan could sense the seriousness in it. "What's this all about?" Jonathan leaned in closer, his voice low. "My son, Daniel, he died in a car accident 3 years ago. But I've learned it wasn't an accident. He was involved in something I don't fully understand. And I think it's connected to a group, an organization. They've been using people like him, and I need to know what they wanted with him. This device, it's a key." Malcolm studied Jonathan's face for a long moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Then, without another word, he picked up the device and plugged it into his laptop. His fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as the screen flickered with activity. Jonathan's heart pounded as he watched the process unfold. Malcolm was good, but even so, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were venturing into dangerous territory. Whoever put the security in place didn't want anyone to get through. Malcolm muttered as the device whirred to life. "But I've seen worse." His fingers flew over the keys, bypassing layers of encryption with alarming speed. It was clear that Malcolm was in his element. This was his world. After what felt like an eternity, Malcolm sat back, his expression unreadable. "Done," he said simply. "I've cracked it." Jonathan's stomach tightened. "What's on it?" Malcolm didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a folder on the screen, and Jonathan leaned forward, eyes scanning contents. The files weren't as straightforward as he'd hoped. They were filled with technical jargon, complex algorithms, and strings of numbers that made little sense to him. But there was one file in particular that caught his attention, a video file, labeled only with a string of characters that meant nothing to him. "This is it," Malcolm said, tapping the file with a knowing look in his eyes. "This is the key to everything." Jonathan swallowed, his mouth dry as he nodded. "Play it." The video began to load. As the screen flickered to life, Jonathan held his breath, praying for clarity, for answers. The video was grainy, the image flickering in and out of focus. But after a few seconds, a face came into view. It was Daniel. Jonathan's heart skipped a beat. His son's face appeared on the screen, looking younger, more vibrant than in the photos he had of him. He was sitting in what appeared to be a sterile, white room. His expression was tired, worn down, but there was a determination in his eyes that Jonathan hadn't seen in years. To whoever watches this, Daniel's voice came through the speaker, and Jonathan's breath caught in his chest. "If you're seeing this, then you're part of the reason why I'm doing this. I don't know who you are or what you want from me, but I'm leaving this behind. There's something I need you to know, something that can't stay buried any longer." Jonathan leaned in, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Malcolm was silent, watching Jonathan closely. Daniel continued, his voice shaky but resolute. "I've learned too much. I know what they are planning, what they've been working on. I can't be a part of it anymore. I've made my choice. If you're watching this, you have a choice too. You can keep your distance and ignore the truth, or you can fight back. But I can't do this alone anymore. I need you to understand. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us." Jonathan's heart raced. What is he talking about? What truth? The video cut out abruptly, leaving the screen filled with static. Jonathan stared at the blank screen, his mind reeling. He was no closer to understanding what had happened to Daniel, but one thing was clear. His son had known something dangerous, and now that knowledge had been passed on to Jonathan. He was no longer just mourning a tragic accident. He was being drawn into something much larger than himself. "This isn't over," Malcolm said quietly, his voice low and serious. "Whatever this is, it's far from over." Jonathan nodded slowly, the weight of the situation settling in. The truth was out there. He just had to find it. And time was running out. Jonathan sat in the dimly lit room, his mind racing as he replayed the video over and over again in his head. Each word Daniel had spoken felt like an echo, reverberating through him, fueling his determination to uncover the truth. The message had been clear. Daniel had known too much, and now that knowledge had been passed on to Jonathan. But it wasn't enough. He still didn't understand the full scope of what had happened, and more importantly, why. Malcolm had already started looking deeper into the files on the device, but there was a sense of urgency in the air. Every passing second felt like a countdown. Jonathan could feel the weight of the threat growing stronger. Someone, or something, was out there, and they were watching. Malcolm looked up from his laptop, his brow furrowed with concentration. "I've found something," he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. "It's not much, but it's a lead. There's a name that keeps coming up in these files. The Collective." Jonathan leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What is it? Who are they?" Malcolm clicked a few keys, and a new set of files appeared on the screen. The Collective is an underground network. It's not just one group, but a network of them operating in the shadows. They've been working on projects that are, let's just say, ethically questionable. Human experimentation, mind control, advanced AI integration. This isn't the kind of thing that gets talked about in public forums. Jonathan stared at the screen, his mind trying to absorb the information. "So, this is what Daniel got involved in." "Looks like it," Malcolm replied. "It's bigger than just Daniel, though. The Collective has been operating for years, using people like him, like you now, to further their experiments. And judging by the files, they were trying to do something with him. Something big. This isn't just about power or money. It's about control." Jonathan's chest tightened. The implications of what Malcolm was saying were staggering. A group, an organization, using people like his son for what? Control? Manipulation? And now, they were after him. "I need to know what they are planning," Jonathan muttered, his voice firm. "I need to stop them." Malcolm shook his head. "You can't just stop them by reading a few files. This isn't some corporate conspiracy, Jonathan. This is something much darker. If Daniel got involved with them, he must have known what they were capable of. And if they wanted him, they'll want you too. You're not safe." Jonathan was already standing, his determination taking over. "I don't care. I'll protect myself. But I won't sit back and do nothing. Not after everything I've learned." Malcolm didn't argue, but his face grew serious. "There's something else, though. You're not the only one who's been targeted. The files on this device point to a pattern. People like Daniel, people who have potential, whatever that means, are being groomed for something. And it's not just about technology. They're using people's minds, manipulating them, trying to create something else, something that could change everything." Jonathan felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He had always known the world could be dark, that people could exploit others for power. But this was a different level of evil. "Where do we start?" Jonathan asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions threatening to consume him. Malcolm glanced at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "There's one person who might know more, a former member of the Collective. She's disappeared off the grid for years, but I think I can track her down." Jonathan's eyes locked onto Malcolm's. "Find her now." Malcolm nodded, his fingers moving with lightning speed. Jonathan's mind raced as he thought about the woman, the homeless woman who had given him the device and the journal. Could she have known about the Collective? Had she been involved in all of this from the beginning? Was she a part of their plans? Or was she simply trying to warn him? The next few hours felt like an eternity. As Jonathan waited, the weight of the situation settled deeper into his bones. He thought about his son, his bright, ambitious boy who had been full of potential. How had Daniel gotten mixed up in something so sinister? Had he known the full extent of it? Had he truly been a victim? Or had he willingly chosen to become part of this hidden world? Finally, Malcolm broke the silence. "I've got a location," he said, his voice clipped, tense. "Her name is Sarah Voss. She used to be high up in the Collective, but she got out. She's hiding in a small town on the outskirts of the city. It's the best lead we've got." Jonathan's blood ran cold. The mention of a name, a person who had been in the heart of this dangerous organization, was both a relief and a terrifying thought. She might hold the answers he needed, but she was also a potential threat. Was she still loyal to the Collective, or had she truly escaped from its grasp? "I'll go," Jonathan said without hesitation. Malcolm frowned. "You don't know what you're walking into, Jonathan. This isn't something you can just... I don't care, Jonathan interrupted, his voice hard. I'm going. You said it yourself. We have to stop them before they stop us. Malcolm didn't argue, but Jonathan could see the concern in his eyes. Fine, but be careful. You don't know what you're dealing with. Jonathan nodded and grabbed his coat, his mind already racing through the possibilities. Sarah Voss might be the key to unlocking the truth about what happened to Daniel, about the collective and the dark web of deceit they had woven around him. But Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this woman than just a simple escapee from a nefarious group. She had once been at the heart of the collective. She knew things, dangerous things. As he drove toward the small town where Sarah was hiding, Jonathan's thoughts turned inward. He wondered what Daniel had known. Had he been trying to protect him? Or had he, too, been swept up in something he couldn't escape? The answer lay ahead, and Jonathan was willing to do whatever it took to find it.